So looking back at the last year, regardless of how splashy the products were or not, what are the two products that you've been working on or your team has been working on that you feel the proudest about?
Oh, so you're asking me to choose which one of my children I
Who
like
is your
more.
favorite PM and why is it Ken Wong? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so two, it's hard to choose two, but I'll say that there's, I'm skipping over some of the stuff which is actually very important to some of our customers, like solving formats and solving governance and all those kinds of stuff, and talk more about like new product surface areas. But yeah, and I think AI BI has really become a BI tool that companies can standardize on. They can make it their single BI platform. I think the ability to roll it out to everybody, which we announced today with Databricks One, is a big part of that. I think that a lot of the features people expect out of BI tools, like the drill capability, cross-filtering, all of those things are at a maturity state, which I think allows people to build most of the dashboards they want to build. Right now, one of the biggest challenges is that the product's been moving so fast that if somebody tested it 6 months ago, they'd say, oh, the features aren't even there.
Yeah.
And they need to start testing it again. So if people are watching this video, test it again.
Yes.
Take a look at it again. It's awesome. Genie has also grown substantially. Much easier to use, much easier to get, to build a Genie data room as a production data asset, roll it out broadly, and then this deep research thing that we're doing with Genie is amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
It's awesome. So that's definitely one of them. I think the other is clearly Lakebase. I think people are kind of confused about the Neon acquisition versus Lakebase. So both are based upon Neon.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the funny thing that people don't realize is that we acquired Neon, but we actually started working with Neon
over
a year ago. Yeah, exactly. And started using the Neon technology, which allows you to separate compute and storage, which I think is this. I think it's been tried before and never sort of done to satisfaction. And I believe that the solution that Neon came up with is really the right solution for the future. It's also open source. It stores data in object storage in an open source format. So it makes it so that you're not locking your data in, you're not locking yourself into Databricks, and you can feel confident you can roll it out without that fear, which I think has been one of the big issues with OLTP in the past.
God, no, that's pretty cool. And honestly, I think I've seen that product maturity too. I think you kind of alluded, not in those ways, but like they're like, hey, try it again. And I think I've noticed that a lot in the products. There's a lot, they feel a little bit more refined more and more over time, which is natural for any product, but I'm seeing that for new releases, that's becoming more and more of a pattern. So less of like, hey, we have to be the first to do something, but hey, we have to first to do this, and it has to meet this minimum bar. I think I've seen that bar go up, at least from the outside. So
yeah, I think that's also true. Now, can I go more than two?
Yeah,
because there's some other cool stuff. And
yeah.
I mean, I think Lakeflow is something we talked about for a long time.
Yeah.
We actually announced it last year. But in many ways, the pieces of it have been under development since the beginning of Databricks. Jobs, DLT, which is now declarative pipelines, the orchestration we do, and I think the product is really, in some ways, thinking. ETL is clearly a big part of our business, and I think we're sort of seeing like a new generation of ETL on Databricks, where all of the things that you want to do, like data quality and low code, all of these things are in one place using one single tool set. And you're able to, I think very cost effectively and efficiently roll out these ETL pipelines. I think also, kind of saying we didn't talk about much here at the summit, we didn't talk about much about serverless, but especially declarative pipelines with serverless standard can be a very cost effective way and very easy way to roll out ETL. So now you're taking what might have been a 20,000 line, PySpark job, and turning it into a 100-line declarative pipeline.
Yeah.
It's an open source API now, which is great. So that means you can have confidence. You can move it to Spark if you want to. But then also all this rich tooling around it, which just works out of the gate. I think it dramatically lowers that cost of the cost of setting up a pipeline, the time it takes to set up a pipeline, and all of those sorts of things. So I think that's kind of a magical advancement for many of our customers.
Yeah.
And I'll say one of the areas that when I get questions, I've been doing a lot of customer meetings.
Yeah.
A lot of the questions are about, I've been using Spark. Should I, use the credit pipelines? And the answer is yes. I'd recommend it. And by the way, I'd recommend it. Start with new pipelines if you haven't used it already. Roll it out with new pipelines so you can get to understand it, and then over time, you can migrate to it if you want.
Well,
and Spark's not going anywhere, of course. So
yeah. Well, and the fun thing with declarative pipelines, which I probably will keep on calling DLTs by accident for some time now.
Yeah.
I've been a hard critic before of DLTs. And I have seen them get better over time from where I honestly would not have used them before. I tried and I just didn't feel comfortable with them over time. But I knew some people like different aspects of it. But now I think I've seen 85 to 90% of the opportunities for improvement being addressed by Databricks. So I'm personally excited for Lakeflow to the point that I went from telling people like, hey, don't use Delta Live tables to I had more than a few conversations with Databricks customers. Got to speak with some folks from the Nordic region and whatnot from Databricks, and I told them like, hey, Lakeflow is the future for Databricks, and I think it's going to make things better. And I can see that the team is working hard on making things better, which makes me even more supportive. And like I said, I share with the team like, Lakeflow, moving forward, we got to be the very best we can be with that. So it's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I would just say like it was a super ambitious product.
Yeah, it's a very hard problem to solve.
And it took us time to get from an initial version to where we are today. Many customers have been using it successfully for many years, which is great. There's actually a huge amount of usage already on DLT, especially for streaming pipelines or incremental pipelines. But now I think it's at this point where it's just being adopted by almost all workloads that are kind of classic tabular transformations. You should just use it. And funny thing is that in many ways people are using DLT and don't even know it. DLT backs Lakeflow. It backs our backs a lot of our other features and capabilities. Of course, it backs Lakeflow.
Yes.
It backs things like data quality or data quality capabilities. It backs how do we ingest things into a vector search capability. It backs materialized views. When you call a materialized view from our data warehousing product, it actually starts DLT. So it's this very rich platform that runs in the background and makes a lot of the product work better and more efficiently. So
that's very cool. Now looking ahead for into the next year, obviously I'm sure there's some things you can't say, but what are the two areas that you're thinking your team is probably going to focus a lot on improving or making better, or new features, obviously things that you can say and talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think data intelligence is something that when we announced Lakehouse in 2020, we wrote the blog on Lakehouse. We didn't even have a data warehouse. We didn't have a Unity catalog. We didn't have any of these features, but we knew that was the direction we were going. We knew that this was the future, and it was basically telling the world our strategy very publicly. And I think sort of got to the point last year where it's like everybody said, "Yeah, this is like you are a world-class data warehouse." You saw the adoption this year. That's largely due to that, world-class data warehouse in addition to our ETL platform, in addition to our AI platform. So I think that was a huge advancement for us as a company, or I should say a huge advancement and also really a fulfillment of that vision. And I think data intelligence is still that. We talked about data intelligence, I think the first time over a year ago, and we're well into this journey where you're starting to actually see, when we talk about data intelligence, it's bringing your data, the customer's data, and bringing AI to that data for democratization, which hopefully really shined today with all the Genie advancements, AI BI advancements, the way you can do now with Lake Builder. You can do natural language, low code transformations,
I was
or no code.
super excited about that.
Yeah.
I think I've given that feedback before that. I was super excited about that.
Yeah, that one's awesome. So these are great examples of data intelligence for democratization. But then also there's a second piece. Oh, I didn't mention this in my two. Maybe this should have been my two. The problem is you asked me for two, which is the problem. But I think the other piece is, Agentbricks is a great example of the second part of what we talk about when we talk about data intelligence, which is how do you democratize AI within organizations? How do you make it possible for organizations to reliably build AI agents, utilizing their data, utilizing the resources they have? And I think you probably saw one of the cool things that we demoed was this this ability to do multi-agent, where you can have like a classic text agent doing reasoning and doing other research. You can have a document retrieval as another part of it, and then also use Genie as another agent. Certainly MCP servers as well. So you can really build these rich, powerful agents that have multiple sets of capabilities. So that's been, I think, a huge kind of improvement.
Awesome.
Now you see, I can't choose a child. That's
okay. I gotta get that. Check out this project manager. I'm just when looking back, what was one of the hard lessons learned for this last year?
Well, I think you mentioned one of them, which is that DLT was needed better documentation, needed a better IDE, things like that. I think one of the reasons Databricks I think has been successful as a company with like many products is that we really focus on post-launch improvements. It's like the likelihood is that you're not going to get it 100% right out the gate, but we invest in very rapidly improving products. And I think what we saw with Lakeflow in particular was us really taking that seriously and addressing all the issues people saw. And so I think that's like probably the biggest. I don't know if that's the biggest, but that's a great example of like one of these things where we, I think, transformed the improvement and transformed and really improved the product. I think the other one, but this is not an example of something where it was particularly bad, but it was just early in its life cycle, and that was AIBI. AIBI was an early product when we talked about it last year. But now I feel like it's this very rich and mature product, even just 1 year later. And if you come back a few months from now, you'll be like, wow, it's even that much more capable. And I think we're moving really fast. We're getting a lot done. We're dramatically improving our products. And things that I think are, seem like very simple products in preview ultimately become these very powerful, capable products that are very easy to use. Maybe one other thing is I think Databricks, this democratization angle of how do you make your data and your AI available to all of the users in the company, I think is the other piece that I think we've really evolved on. You look at Databricks when I joined, it was primarily about code and notebooks. And you could write SQL. It was Spark SQL. But so we sort of have tried to tackle many of these issues, and many of the sharp edges in Databricks, and provide higher level interfaces, higher level abstractions. And I think that really shows. And the fact that we're doing it in a unified way, so that if you want to set permissions, you do it one place. You don't never set permissions anywhere else. If you want to, if you want to use, data warehousing and call AI functions, it's the high quality Databricks AI functions. It's not a separate AI product within our data warehouse. So it's this unification portion of what we've done is also very important. And, it's kind of key to the Lakehouse strategy, which is Lakehouse strategy is actually behind the scenes. It's just unification. So that's all it is.
That's fair. By the way, look at that. I asked for one, you gave me three. That's like
I'll give you. I can't, like you said, I can't choose.
Yeah,
you're asking me for favorites or whatever improvements. It's like I said, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, no. I mean, and honestly, I appreciate the hard work that you guys do, because one thing that I've heard also from a lot of Databricks customers, and I've experienced myself, is you guys like feedback.
Oh yeah.
It's not like, how dare you call our baby ugly?
Yeah.
It's like, just do it in a respectful way, but you're like, hey, tell us where we need to fix, because At the end of the day, you want people to use the product, and if customers don't speak up and say, hey, I need more of this, I need less of this, this is not good, this is great, then that's how you know.
Yeah, a funny stat, we just crossed this threshold where we're now doing, across the product management team, about 1,000 customer meetings a week.
That's crazy.
And over half of them are interviews where we're trying to understand somebody's need, somebody's kind of unmet need by the platform. The other half, or a little bit less than a half, are sometimes just answering questions or dealing with things like that. But we're really trying to focus. We really focus on like how do we really tease out what customers need about every single feature.
That's a challenge.
And not to meet one customer's need, but ideally to understand the problem behind the problem, and then draw that out. And then solve that problem across all customers for a long period of time. And that's really kind of the goal. So.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions. I know you're a busy guy, so I want to be mindful of that.
Of course. Well, I'm happy to spend the time.
Thank you so very much for your time.